Good evening, people. Titus here for part 15 of our Asteroids mini-series, and in this video, we'll work on creating the title and intro screen to turn this prototype into more of a game. Let's not waste any time and jump right into it. Alright, so I think starting off, we're going to go to our widgets folder. You can right-click, go to user interface, and we'll create a new widget blueprint. We'll select user widget, and let's call this WBP underscore main menu. We can then double-click to open that up, and then dock it in our parent window. I always like starting off with a canvas panel, so we'll search canvas, drag it in, and you can use your mouse wheel to scroll in and kind of frame it out. Now I think making this a little bit easier, since it's going to be a title screen, it's going to be very simple and very reminiscent of the title asteroid, or the classic Asteroids title screen, which is basically the title and it said, like, you know, press a button to play. So what we'll do is we'll use a vertical container box, drag that center, choose our anchors, choose full screen, go back to anchors, hold control, and then choose full screen, and we'll kind of pin it out like that. Now what we can do is basically add some spacer and text elements. So we'll first start off with a spacer, drag this into the vertical box, so it's a child of it, and then find your text element, drag that into the vertical box as well, and then we'll add one more spacer, and then we'll do one more text element. So it kind of looks like that. Now for the first text element, I'm going to justify at center. The text for this one is going to be the Asteroids. I'm going to use my pixel font that I use from the web, and then I'm going to make it pretty large, somewhere around there. For the second text element, I'll also justify that center. This one, I think I'll just have it say, press space to play. Maybe that'll work. Also going to use the same pixel font. I'm going to make it a wee bit bigger, but not quite as big. And then I just need to space this appropriately, and I can use my aptly named spacers. First value is the X value, that's your left and right, and second value is your Y, which is your up and down. So I can just click and drag, kind of push that maybe right around there. And the second spacer, I'll just give a little bit of extra space, somewhere around there. And I think that looks pretty good. Now I'm going to collapse the vertical box, and I'm going to use this main menu widget for the title screens as well that come in. Yeah, we'll use Unreal Engine for this case, but this is where you'd see like all your different tools, like Blender, Unreal, a lot of those different systems that you may use for your development. You give them a call out in the beginning of the game. To do that, I'm going to use an image. I'm going to drag that into the canvas panel. And then this first image, I'm actually going to call it image black. And then under color and opacity, I'm actually going to set that to a black. And then under anchors, I'm just going to click full screen, go back to anchors, hold control, click full screen, kind of like that. Then I'm going to add a second image to my canvas panel, so it doesn't put it in the vertical box. So it kind of looks like this. And this one, I'm going to call it image underscore UE. Now I downloaded from the web a simple texture with the Unreal Engine logo. So I'll just drag that in there. Go back to main menu here, and for the brush, we can hit the image drop down. I think it's just called Unreal, and splash screen that one. And then for the anchors, I'll choose full screen, go back, hold control, click it again, and that's going to be the setup there. The way I'm going to make this work is I'm going to use an animation, so we'll click the animation section here, add a new animation, we'll call it main menu, select it, and then we can track various elements. I'm going to select the first image first. Whoops. Go back and hit track, and then it makes a reference to image black, so I can select that. I can add render opacity. I'm going to leave it at 1 and add a keyframe there. Then I can select the Unreal Engine, hit track, makes a reference to Unreal Engine, you can select that, and then add the render opacity as the item to track. And I'm actually going to set that at 0 starting off, and I'm going to lock that in. I'm going to go to 3/4 of a second, and I'm going to lock these in. I can leave this one alone, actually. Actually, I might as well put it on just to be safe. And then I'm going to come to maybe 2 seconds, and then I'll set the render opacity to 1, and that inserts keyframe there. And then I'm going to go to maybe 3¼ seconds, and I'll lock that in, so just so it stays on the screen for that entire time. And I'm going to go to 5 seconds, and I'm going to frame them both to 0. So if you look at this little timeline, you'll basically see Unreal will disappear, and then you'll see the as well as the other black backdrop, and then the asteroids will kind of show up there, just like that. But we need to play that animation, so we need to set up the code for that. You can click from designer view to graph view in the top right corner, and we can use the event construct to drive that logic. It's pretty simple. You'll see animation on the left hand side for whatever you call it. In our case, we called it main menu. You just drag that in, do a get, pull off, search for play, and you'll see play animation. Plug that up like so. And we don't really need to do anything else with this because we're going to handle the logic on the level blueprint. So I think we're actually good with our widget. So let's actually create the level. So we'll go to File, New Level. I'm just going to use an empty level and hit Create. Now you could just do just the widget and then kick it off on the level blueprint code, and that's fine. It'll just kind of be like black screen with the white text. What I think would be more cinematic is if we actually do the asteroid spawning. We won't do like the player or the UFO, but we'll just have the rocks kind of just coming across the screen doing their thing. And I think that'll look pretty good. And we can use a lot of our blueprints that we already set up for that. So let's go to our blueprints folder. We created our skybox in an earlier vid, so we can just drag that in. We can set that at 0, 0, 0. Can't see anything because it's dark, so we got to add a directional light. So hit the drop down, search directional light. You can drag that in, and then we can throw that at 0, 0, 0, and you'll see the scene will start to come alive as light kind of filters through. The next thing we'll want to do is remember our player doesn't have a camera attached to it, so we'll need to add a level camera. So we'll search for camera. We can use a basic camera actor. We'll put it at 0, 0. And then I think we did 3000. And then the rotation, if I remember right, we did a negative 90 degrees on the Y to flip it down. Everything else is good except we'll leave perspective, 90 degrees is fine. We have to tell it to auto activate for a player, and we'll set it for player 0, which is player 1. Oops. And then we will save this level, save current level as, and we'll call this main menu. All right. The other thing we'll want to do is we will want to add a player start, so we can control where the player shows up. Although it probably doesn't matter, we might as well just do it for good practice, and then we'll set it at 0, 0, 0. Now, what we have to do is the player's gonna basically spawn in here anyways, so we need a way to basically hide the player, disable collision, and disable movement. So we'll have to set that up here in a second. But I think what we'll do is we'll probably do the level blueprint first. In order to get the rocks spawning correctly, because right now they're just going to spawn, I think, the center of the map. Yeah, they're just going to spawn on us. We need to set up the target points. So let's add 1 target point. Oops. actually, yeah, let's switch the perspective view. Let's go to top view, and then we'll zoom out a bit. And now let's add the target point. So I had one in this corner, that way it's at 0 on the z-axis. So that way the rocks kind of are in the right elevation, I guess. And let's just make it easy. We'll just do 2000 for everything. And then when I hold Alt, well, actually let's maybe rename it. So we'll call this maybe rock 1. And then when I hold Alt and drag off, it'll automatically make that rock 2. And then we'll just make this negative 2000, negative 2000. That way it's even. Hold Alt, drag into here. That's rock 3. So we'll do negative 2000, 2000. And then we'll hold Alt one last time, drag into this quadrant. That way we get all 4 quadrants. And this will be 2000, 2000. And that should be good for our setup, at least for the level. So I think the level's prepped. So let's actually go into the level blueprint. So we can click up here. We'll open the level blueprint. And we got a lot of work to do in this one. I'll try to get through it quickly. The begin play, we're going to cast into the game manager. So cast to BP game manager. And then on that success, we'll cast to BP ship, which is our player 1. And then we need to actually store both as a reference. So I'm going to break that connection using Alt, right click, promote this to a variable. I'll call that game manager ref. And then I'll promote this to a variable and call this player ref. Hook these pins up like so. Off the game manager, we can come into a get game mode. Off the ship, we can get player pawn. Index 0 means player 1. And this is looking good. Now there's a few different things we're going to want to do. The first thing we're going to want to do is set up the rocks. Let's do a custom event, and we'll call this update rock locations. And then the next thing we want to do is set up the player. So we'll do custom event, set up, I guess, main menu. Well, maybe we'll call it instead of player. We're doing a lot of player updates in that one. And then we're going to also do a keyboard event, but we'll wait on that. So the way we're doing it is we're going to get our game manager reference, drag into that. When you pull off that, we can do set rock spawn 1. And then you can basically pull off that same pin and set rock 2 or rock spawn 2. And then set rock spawn 3. And you don't really have to do 4. I mean, you can do as many as you want. Honestly, we'd probably be alright with just a couple. Gives a little variety, I guess. And then to set the locations, the way we did that is we first get world location. It's not going to show up. Just uncheck context sensitive, and then you'll see the transformation get world location. And then now we can basically come into our level and select rock 1. And then when you right click and you check context sensitive again, you'll see a create reference to rock 1. And then you can just hook these 2 pins up. It'll automatically make the conversion. And then we can just duplicate these 2 nodes across to all the other nodes here. And then the location is going to hook into here, like so. And then we just need to reference rock 2, 3, and 4. So the way we do that, we just select rock 2, right click, create the reference, drag it in. That one's good. Select rock 3, right click, make the reference. If you don't see it, make sure your context sensitive is on. Hook that pin up there. And then rock 4, you can right click, create the reference, hook that up there. And now we'll just hook up our execution pins. And then off this pin, we can call I don't even remember what we just called this. Update rock locations. So we can do update rock locations. Drag this up a bit. And I think this function is, or this event is done. So we can comment, update rock spawn locations. Give it a fancy color if you want. Now for the setup main menu, this is going to be a lot of player code. We need a way to do a few things. We need to disable controller input, and because we made a custom, we did custom code for the control movement, so we didn't use the player script, which means we don't have access to the disable, movement or input. So we're gonna have to do that manually, which is okay. We can get away with it pretty simple. But we also need to hide the HUD, because if you remember in the earlier videos, we created the widget in the game manager, but we called it from the player. So we're going to need to deal with that. So let's actually open up our player. And I think let's just create the code to hide the HUD real quick. So we'll just do a custom event and call it hide HUD. Let's come into just a brief delay to account for any irregularities. You can just probably do 0.1. Just very, very small delay, so 0.1 or 0.2. And then we can use the game manager reference in the ship, pull off that to get HUD. And then off the HUD, we can pull into remove from parent, and that'll remove the widget from the screen. And that's pretty much it. Now we need to deal with the controller inputs. So there's tick, there's begin play. So there's a controller input for thrust, there's spin, and there's fire. So we need a way to deal with that. So let's give ourselves a little bit of room. I think the easiest way is just use a Boolean check, right? So let's add a variable. Disable controller question mark. I think that'll be good. And what we'll do is we'll drag these out over here. Drag these out over here. I'm just going to select all this, control deselect that, and drag this over here. Alright, so what we need to do is we need to get a reference to disable controller. We need to say if it is not true, so not Boolean, hold B into a branch, so B click into the graph, hook this up here, and we need to replicate the same pin. So we'll duplicate it with Control D over here. We need it twice over here, so Control D and Control D, and that should be good. So for this one, we'll hook into here, and then if it's true, we'll execute the code. So in other words, if disable controller is not true, evaluates the true, then do this code. So basically, that's saying if the controller is not disabled, do this. If it is disabled, do nothing. Same thing for this. We'll hook the pin up here, come off the true. You don't have to use the not boolean if you don't want to. I find it's more readable. Maybe I'm wrong. Come into here, into completed, true into that, and then triggered here and true into this. And that should control the movement logic for us. So compile and save on that one. So now when we go back to the main menu logic, the first thing we can do is use our, so again, we're in the level blueprint. We can call into our player reference. So hold control, drag it out. And then we can reference the disable controller boolean, and we can set it to true. So basically when this this level loads, let's disable the controller's input, which is what we want. We don't want the player moving around in the main menu. We just want them to see it, basically. We then want to set the static mesh to hidden. So you can do set hidden in game, and you'll get a bunch of references. The only one that matters for us is the static mesh, which I called mine this asteroid ship. It'll make the appropriate references, and you can hook the pin up and then check the box for new hidden. And then you're pretty good with that. Now you also need to deal with collision. There's a great function for that. You can just pull off the player reference and just search for collision. Maybe set actor enable collision, that's what it is. So set actor enable collision. And then you can just tell it to just uncheck it, so its collision's basically disabled for the entire actor, which includes all the components, which exactly what we want actually. And then we can create a new widget. So create widget. The widget we're creating is the main menu. This will also play the video. We don't need to promote it to a variable because we're not really going to be using it for anything. We can add it to viewport, and then we can get our player reference again, and then we can drag into the hide HUD event that we just created, and this will pull off the scoring system and the lives. And we'll also create some energy and stamina in a later video. And then I think this one is pretty done, so we can comment this out, set up player controls for main menu. Alright, but these aren't being called, right? So we got update rock locations, so that one is. So then we got to do set up main menu. Alright, but the other thing we want to do is the UFO is going to be spawning. You probably don't want that either. So we need a way to disable that. In the game manager, we set up a pause option for the rocks. We can make something similar for the UFO. So let's just come to our game manager, open that up here. You'll see here's the code for the rock spawners. So we can pause it and unpause it. It's going to be the same thing. So we'll just do custom event. We'll do pause UFO. And then we'll do another custom event. Do unpause UFO. We already have a reference to our enemy spawner, which is the function that we made in the begin play. So we just hold control, drag that out, control D to duplicate it. And then on one, you're going to come into a pause timer by handle. In the other one, you're going to come into an unpause timer by handle. I don't know if we're going to use the unpause thing ever, but if you need it, it's there. And now that that's set up, we can go back to our main menu and we can call a reference to our game manager. So hold control, drag that out, and then we can say pause UFO. And I think the begin play might be done. So if I didn't mess anything up, let's give it a play. See the splash screen, so the widget's working, so it plays the video, and then it loads us into our main menu, and we actually have the rocks coming on the screen. The player is in the center of the screen. You can't see him because we hid the static mesh. I can't move, I can't shoot, because we have that Boolean check that is working, and the rocks are hitting the player, but collision is disabled, so it is not exploding and spawning a bunch of Niagara systems. So this works. The only problem with it is when I press space to play, it's not playing, so let's fix that. In the level blueprint, we can just right-click, search spacebar. There's a keyboard event, so when the spacebar is pressed, we can say open level by name. The level we were working with for the majority of the series was level 1, no spaces. Pile save. So now we get our splash screen. Should load into the menu, and now if I push space, it's going to load level 1, which gives me back my ship. You don't have to worry about coding or undoing any of that logic because it's a new level. It basically resets all that, and everything else is working. We got our UFO, we got our collision. We're basically cooking with gas. Alright, good people, we'll cut the video here for now, but in the next one we'll work on the high score screen that stores the player's best attempts. As always, thanks for watching, consider subscribing, and see you on the next one.